first, we're looking at Montana, where Republicans are challenging Democratic Senator Jon Tester. And in the state's at-large congressional district, Republican Greg Gianforte is facing a challenge from Democrats. Sally Mauk is the host of Montana Public Radio's weekly political analysis program, Campaign Beat. She joins me now from Missoula, Montana. All right, Sally, so results are coming in the Republican primary. What do we know so far?
Well, we don't have any clue who's winning so far. There aren't that many results in, but we do have the front runners, I think, being delineated pretty early. And in the Senate race, not unexpectedly, Matt Rosendale and Russell Fagg are the two front runners. And I think the only thing surprising in these early returns is that Russell Fagg is making a strong showing. Matt Rosendale is the true conservative in the race, a very heavy Trump supporter. Russ Fagg is the more moderate Republican in the race and was seen as having to make up a lot of ground to catch up with Matt Rosendale, who is also the state auditor, has had the most money in the race and certainly the most outside PAC money in the race. So that's shaping up to be maybe a very close race this evening.
Well, how are Republican candidates trying to position themselves to take on Senator Jon Tester?
I think they're going all in with President Trump. I think they're going to attack Senator Tester for his role in the Ronny Jackson nomination. When Mr. Jackson withdrew his name from being President Trump's pick to head the Veterans Affairs Department, Senator Tester kind of led the push to investigate Dr. Jackson. And as you know, and I'm sure your viewers know, President Trump was not happy about how that all went down. And I think Republicans see that as a vulnerability for Senator Tester in November and something as a bit of a gift to them.
Well, in the state's at-large congressional district, 5 Democrats are vying to take on Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte. Is it Gianforte? Yes, Ed's nodding. Thank you. I should know that. What have been the key issues, Sally, in that race?
I think in that race, it's interesting in the Democratic primary in Montana, you have a progressive populist in John Heenan. He's an attorney who's definitely running on issues like single-payer health care, and he's going to take on the corporate bullies against the little guy. And then you have a moderate Democrat in Grant Keir. And then you have the only woman in the race, state legislator Kathleen Williams. And the early conventional wisdom was that John Heenan would maybe be pretty easily win that race, but Keir might give him a challenge. And what we're seeing in the early returns is that Kathleen Williams, who has not kept up with either of them in terms of fundraising, is holding her own in the early returns. But again, it's too early to say that's a trend, but it would be a major upset, I think, if the only woman in the race won the House Democratic primary and took on Greg Gianforte in November.
Sally, my colleague Ed O'Keefe has a question for you. Go ahead, Ed.
Sally, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you with us. You know, Gianforte is that congressman, of course, who beat up a reporter the day before he was elected to Congress. Do voters there remember that? Do they care?
I think it's something he'll never outlive, so of course they remember, but I also think it's old news in Montana. I think Democrats still want to make hay about that and will, but I'm not sure it's going to play all that well. He's been in office a year now. He hasn't done anything nearly as dramatic as that, and certainly nothing that people could attack him on in terms of his personal behavior. So personally, I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I think Democrats will try to make it one, but I don't think voters are going to care as much about that as they will about the issues that are going to be in the race.
And Sally, Caitlin Huey-Burns has a question for you. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hey, Sally, we think of Montana as a deep red state. Obviously, Trump won it by an overwhelming margin, but it's also a state that is used to splitting tickets, right? The state has a Democratic governor. I'm wondering if you can kind of explain how this state might be different in terms of what the electorate looks like, what the electorate wants compared to some of these others that we're looking at. How big of a factor is the president? Did he change the game, so to speak, in Montana in terms of whether voters there might want to put Tester out of office?
Montana is still giving President Trump high approval ratings, over 50%, but That said, as you point out, it's a state that votes the person as much as the party. That's how Governor Bullock, I think, got reelected. He's well respected as an individual. And Senator Tester is well respected. He's a true Montana farmer, something he isn't play acting at. He really does come home and farm every weekend. And that's something Montanans know him personally. There are only 1 million people in the whole state, so all the candidates get to meet a lot of the people who vote for them. And that personal contact, I think, overrides party in Montana, and is why sometimes we have Democrats in what is traditionally seen as a red state winning. And I think Senator Tester, that gives him a leg up in his reelection bid. But his last 2 races were very close, so he's not taking this race for granted by any means.
Sally, it's Elaine Quijano again. Given what you just spelled out about the fact that Montanans know Senator Tester, how well insulated do you think he will be from those anticipated Republican attacks regarding the VA secretary choice that President Trump attacked Tester for essentially, destroying his opportunity to advance with that nomination?
Mm-hmm. Well, what comes up against that whole incident is that Senator Tester has long been a very effective advocate for veterans. Veterans issues have been something he has worked on his entire time in the Senate. So I think veterans in the state, and there are more veterans in Montana than in most states, really respect Senator Tester, and I think that will play against what will be the effort to tie the Ronny Jackson episode to efforts to defeat Senator Tester. But then again, President Trump has promised to come to Montana to campaign against Senator Tester, so that's an X factor that we don't know how that's going to play out.
All right, to be continued. Sally Mauk. Sally, thanks very much for your insight.
My pleasure. Thank you.